Hello, I'm Michael Ribnick of Unanet's Enterprise Engineering team. The purpose of this video is to walk through Unanet's Advanced Project Management Dashboard, or APMD. The APMD is an advanced refreshable web query-based report and is comprised of 10 underlying Unanet shared reports. The dashboard depicts both project and project management process-related performance. The workbook itself is composed of two parts: the dashboard shown below, and a custom ribbon in Excel labeled APMD above. The custom ribbon allows you to filter data, set corporate thresholds, save configurations, and toggle views. We will now review each of the sections of the dashboard itself, starting with the Project Selector window. The Project Selector window is the heart of the APM dashboard, and it depicts a sortable list of all available projects. One thing to note is that refreshable web queries make use of roles in your Unanet system. So I have logged into this dashboard as an admin, and that's why I can see all 7 applicable projects in the system. But if I had logged into the dashboard as a PM or a lesser role that has less access to projects, I would only be able to see the projects that I am able to see in the system itself. But logged in as an admin, I can see all 7 projects in the system. The Project Selector window allows you first to make project selections. So if I was to select project number 5 here, when I make that selection, it changes the project performance chart below to depict performance for that specific project. And it also changes this APM metric section to the right and a labor category allocation detail section in the bottom right-hand corner to be based on the project that you select. Another thing to note is that the Project Selector window, each of the headers themselves are actually, almost every single one of the headers itself is a drop-down box that allows you to alter the display of that information. So project code is actually a drop-down box that allows you to see project title. The manager, the project manager, is also a drop-down box that allows you to see the project lead or the project manager. Owning org allows you to see the owning org or the project org. And these last 4 columns are really unique because they give you access to 48 different metrics on revenue, profitability, variances, level of effort, etc. And that's true for each of these last 4 columns. You'll see above that there are radio buttons above each of the columns, and that allows you to sort the information in the project list by that metric. So I've got this metric, revenue backlog at completion, selected here, and it's being sorted in ascending order. But using this toggle to the right, I can quickly assort it into descending order, as shown here. And that's the case for all of the headers. So go ahead and select a column, and you can display in ascending or descending order like this. Okay, so the project selector list by default, as we had mentioned, it displays all projects, but you can use the report filter section of the APM ribbon to filter down that list. So let's say, if you're looking at the project codes here, I wanted to only see project codes that contained the string Y03. I could enter Y03 in the project code contains filter here, and you would see that my list would show only the projects that meet that criteria. I could take it a step further and use any of the additional filters, for example, billing type, to display only projects whose project code contains Y03 and whose billing type is cost plus to filter down the list here. You'll see that there are additional filters for project title, project org, owning org, project lead, project manager, and start date and end date respectively. And this is a tool at your disposal to filter down the list of applicable projects for your needs. So that is the project selector window. Now you can see when I made a selection for a project, it automatically depicted that project performance in the project performance chart, which is what we'll go over next. In your APMD ribbon at top, there's a section called Chart Display Options, and this gives you all of the available series that you can display in the project performance chart. So I'll go ahead and uncheck all of the series that we have displayed, and I'll go one by one to show you through what you can see. So when you're awarded a project, you'll have a project total value or ceiling, and that's depicted in a purple bar going from left to right. Our recommendation as part of the project management process is to create a plan, a combination of people plans and expense plans in the system that add up to the total value of the project. And that's called our baseline metric below. And so you can see, let's see if we can pick one that shows it over time. Here's a good one that shows our baseline over time. Then after the project awarded, you start to get funding, and you can enable the funding value, which is shown as a solid green bar for the actual funded value, and then a dotted green line for the 75% of the funded value. The chart will display actuals to date as a solid red line, and it will show estimate to complete as a dotted red line going forward. This is a project that's already completed, but if we selected another one, it might be a better depiction. So here's a good example of actuals to date plus projections going forward. And then you also have the ability to display at the time now indicator the variance between your actuals and your plan, and at the pop end is the same thing. In addition to cumulative metrics, you can display monthly planned amounts, monthly actual amounts, or monthly estimate to complete amounts, which give you an indication of trend. Let's go back to our default configuration here. The other thing that you can do on the project performance chart is use this toggle metric button. And this allows you to toggle between a cumulative display over the period of performance of the project here. And when you hit toggle metric, instead of displaying revenue, it displays profitability. And what this does is it gets rid of some of the unnecessary series on the chart, and it simply shows you planned profitability versus actual profitability over time. And finally, an additional thing that you can do is utilize this roll-up projects button. Now, what this roll-up projects button will do is it will aggregate all projects available in the project selector list and depict the aggregate of all those projects in the project performance chart. So let's say, looking at our project codes again, that project codes 1, 6, and 7 are all part of a larger contract. And we can see that because the first 3 characters are C03. So we're going to call that contract vehicle 3. And let's say that we want to depict an aggregate of all 3 projects. What we could do is type in to our project code contains, we could say C03 to narrow down the list to only those 3 projects. And then we could hit the roll up projects button here. And now the project performance chart will display the aggregate of all 3 of those projects, or however many projects meet the criteria that you specify. It is also the case that in this APM metrics section to the right, that these 3 metrics, which we'll go over shortly, are now going to show an aggregate of all projects because you've hit that roll up projects button. So I'm going to uncheck that button. And let's review the APM metrics section on the right-hand side of the dashboard now. The APM metrics section is designed to give you insight into 3 critical metrics as part of the APM process. The first metric is called revenue backlog, which shows you how much funding you have remaining at completion of the effort. The large number you'll see off the right-hand side, that is your variance. So that is the difference between the funded amount and the forecasted revenue that you have in the system. And this chart on the left-hand side shows you via the black triangle your actual performance as a variance. So right now it's at 0%, which means it's 0% variance from funded value to forecast. If you were to go under this way, you would be underrunning the task, and if you were to go over, you'd be overrunning the task. And what we have here is you can see there's a light gray band that represents the acceptable threshold, what we consider the acceptable threshold. And that is something that you can set yourself in the thresholds menu of the APMD ribbon, which we'll go over later. So in this example, we have said that it is acceptable to underrun the task by 2% or expend all the way up to the funded value, but not exceed it. But you can adjust that. The second metric in the APM metrics section is profitability variance, and that is measuring strictly the difference between your planned profitability and your forecasted profitability. You can see here that we've considered the acceptable threshold to be from -2% to 2%, and that the black triangle is showing that it is well beyond our acceptable threshold. And there is even an indicator here that says that the actual value is outside of the range of the chart. So it's far greater than 7.5%. And you can see that here we had forecasted this effort to be 71.88% profitability, or we had planned it to be 13.04% profitability, and it's forecasted to be 71.88%, which is why this arrow is the way that it is. The last metric is level of effort variance, and this is simply depicting the difference between planned level of effort and forecasted level of effort. You can see here we have set an acceptable threshold of -10 to 10%, and that our black arrow is showing that we are greater than 30% underrun what we had forecasted in terms of level of effort. You can see that from the numbers here. And the total is 2,216 hours, 2,216.8 hours less than what we had planned. The labor category allocation detail section below the APM metrics section, this is provides a breakdown of these 2,216 hours by labor category. So that is the APM metrics section. I'd like to now zoom out a little bit and discuss the section on the left-hand side, which is a process adherence section. And this is a section designed to depict process-related performance. And there are really 4 key things that we're looking at. The first part of our project management process is we want our project managers to create plans in the system. And so our first metric says what percentage of applicable projects, and we've defined applicable projects as projects that have a total value associated with them, although you can change that in the thresholds menu. What percentage of applicable projects have plans? And you can see here that 3 out of the 3 applicable projects have plans for a total of 100%. I'm actually going to remove the filter that we placed earlier to see all projects. So you can see here, 7 out of 7 applicable projects have plans, so that's great. The second metric that we're looking at is what percentage of applicable projects, which we have defined as projects with a funded value associated with them, what percentage of those projects have assignments, which we're using for our forecasted data. And you can see here that all 7 projects have assignments, which is great. The third and fourth metrics in the process adherence section are designed to assess the quality of those plans and assignments. So the third metric is what percentage of those projects are planned within 2.5% of the total value. And you can see here again that 7 out of 7 projects meet that criteria. But in the fourth metric, it says what percentage of projects are assigned within 2.5% of the funded value. And you can see that only 3 of the 7 projects meet that metric. And what's neat about this process adherence section is you can click on a metric and it will filter the project selector list to show all projects that are not meeting that metric. So here we saw that 3 out of 7 projects are meeting that metric, but 4 out of 7 aren't. And when I click on the metric, I can see the 4 projects that aren't meeting that metric. Finally, there is an Other Projects section of the dashboard, and this depicts projects currently at risk and projects forecasted to be at risk. In this example, there are no at-risk projects and no projects forecasted to be at risk. But if there were, you could simply click on the metric and the project selector window would display the projects that were at risk or forecasted to be at risk. So those are all the components of the main dashboard. Let's go back and review some of the components of the ribbon that we haven't explored yet. The first is the thresholds menu, which I have alluded to before. This is the menu where you can establish what an applicable project is, whether it's based on total value or funded value, and where you can determine what the threshold you're comparing plans and assignments to is. You can also determine what percentage is the threshold for these numbers to turn red. So right now I'm saying that any metric that is less than 80% would show up as red here. You can determine what it means to be at risk, whether that's a forecast exceeding the funded value, the total value, or the bill dollar value. And you can also adjust the light gray bands shown in the APM metrics section through this APM metrics section in the corporate thresholds form here. You also have the ability to, through these two configuration buttons here, you can save different configurations of your filters and the last four metrics of the project selector window. So let's say that you really liked revenue backlog at EAC, revenue backlog at plan, start date and end date. You really like to look at those all the time. You could access this metric configurations window here, click on Save Configuration, and call that your default configuration or give it whatever name you want. Press OK. And that allows you to go back in here and load that configuration of metrics later. And you can save as many configurations of these metrics as you'd like. Similarly, if you had a combination of report filters that you used often, for example, project code contains C03 and billing type contains FP for fixed price, you could save that configuration in your filter config option here, default filter config, so that you can access it later. And the combination of different filter configurations and metric configurations is a really powerful tool at your disposal. There are a couple additional features which we have yet to go over in the custom ribbon, and we'll go over those now. The first is this toggle view button. And this toggle view button will change the view from this default view, which depicts project performance, to a more organizational level view that depicts fiscal year performance. And we'll go over the changes now. One of the first changes you'll see is that process adherence section that we had highlighted before. It now is a fiscal year performance section. And the four metrics are what percentage of projects exceed the year-to-date revenue plan, what percentage of projects exceed the year-to-date profit plan, what percentage of projects exceed the year-end revenue plan, and what percentage of projects exceed the year-end profit plan. And these metrics are similar to the process adherence metrics in that when you click on a metric, it will display for you the project that is falling behind that metric. An additional change, and let's see if we can find a project that is applicable, is that the project performance chart now only displays plans, actuals, and forecasted data for the current fiscal year. In this example, our fiscal year is January to December, but this could be any fiscal year of your choosing. And so this is only showing us what we have planned and our actual values for the current fiscal year. On the right-hand side, what used to be the APM metrics section is now a financial metrics section. And these charts depict the percentage of target you have achieved. So let's take, for example, this year-to-date revenue metric here. Your actual target, 100% of your target, is represented by a red vertical line, as shown here. And the black bar going from left to right shows you the percentage of your target achieved. So you can see here that the black bar is basically touching the red line, which means that you've reached 100% of your target. These gray bands simply indicate to you different bands of the threshold. So the dark gray band is showing you 0 to 50% of the target. The medium gray band is showing you 50 to 75% of the target. And the light gray band is showing you 75% of the target and greater. And so this visual is designed to clearly depict for you how you're performing against your target. So you can see here, meeting the target, exceeding it, meeting it, exceeding it. And you can roughly tell based on the visuals where you're at. So 100%, 150%, 100%, 140%, etc. So the right-hand side in the financial metrics section, you'll see as a large number, this is your variance to your target. You'll see the metric itself, and then you'll see the planned and actual value so that you can see what was planned and what you're actually doing as well. And that is the case for year-to-date revenue, year-to-date profit, year-end revenue, and year-end profit. Now, what's really neat about the organizational level view that we see here is if you recall that roll-up projects button that we used earlier, if you were to click this now, you are now seeing an aggregate for all projects in your organization. So this is telling you all the projects in your organization and which projects are meeting their year-to-date revenue and profit plans and their year-end revenue and profit plans. You can see as a depiction over time how you're doing relative to your plan for the year. And you can see at a high level how you're doing against your targets for the year, both in terms of revenue and profitability. So that is the organizational view of the project management dashboard. There are a couple extra features I'd like to share with you. For one, there is a help menu here. This help menu has buttons that relate to all the sections of the APM dashboard. Clicking on any one of these buttons will open up a YouTube video where I walk you through that component of the dashboard. There is also a button here called Sanitize, which I will push now. Pushing the Sanitize button deletes all the data from the dashboard so that you can send it to your PMs. So here's your sanitized version of the dashboard. You can now distribute this to your team, and your team can then log in with their information and see only the data that they can see. And that is our overview of the APM dashboard. If you would like more information about acquiring the APM dashboard for your organization, please reach out to the Enterprise Engineering team at enterpriseengineering@unanet.com or contact your CSM. Thank you.